Welcome to the Playbook for Youth Sports, the podcast where we go beyond the field to explore the business side of the game. I'm your host, Jennifer Peacock. Today, we're diving into a topic that can truly elevate a sports organization's impact: sponsorships and partnerships, and how the right ones can strengthen a club from the inside out. From deepening community engagement to creating memorable experiences for athletes and families, effective partnerships can transform the way an organization operates. And when done right, it's truly a win-win for everyone involved. Joining me today is James Peterson, Director of Partnerships at 3Step Sports. James has spent years building meaningful, high-impact relationships across clubs, communities, and corporate partners. And he knows exactly what separates a great sponsorship from a forgettable one. In today's conversation, we'll break down what makes a sponsorship actually work, common pitfalls that clubs should avoid, and real practical examples that organizations of any size can learn from. Let's dive in. James Peterson, Director of Partnerships at 3Step. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Jennifer. Yes, no, thank you for having me involved with your podcast series.
I was really looking forward to this conversation today because I believe that if sponsorships are done right, it really can help support clubs and the parents that they serve. And you are so good at what you do. And we've had so many long, great conversations about it that I'm really excited to get your feedback and experience and expertise in this industry.
Totally.
I wanted to start with some insight that you've had and experiences, and maybe you can share some things that have worked really well and maybe some things that have not worked really well. So to start, is there an activation that you've done that has really stood out to you that was meaningful and impactful for the club?
Well, I'll lead up to that question real quick just to give a little bit of background. Yes, my role is here at 3Step Sports, but I actually came through one of our acquisitions. I was with Seacoast United Sports Club for well over a decade, where I learned my trade, so to speak. I had an amazing mentor, Paul Willis, who, we always say the Church of Paul Willis. I learned a lot from him that was invaluable in terms of sponsorship, partnership, relationship, friendship. And that's something certainly that I've tried to instill in every partnership that we have. Out of all the partnerships I've been fortunate enough to be involved with, one of them that really stands out to me is with Delta Dental. So with my previous club that I was with, Seacoast United Sports Club, which is based in New England, we had a relationship with Northeast Delta Dental. They represent the Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont market that kind of falls under their umbrella. We had developed a relationship directly with their CEO, Tom Raffio, who's a phenomenal human being. And then it also helped that the director of marketing, I coached her son. So we were able to, kind of establish a relationship there. We worked on a number of things ranging from branding to digital marketing and so forth. But the one piece that really stood out to that, and we're still doing it today, is this Show Us Your Winning Smile campaign. And the idea was around our events, we kind of had this rally call. We had a branded step and repeat banner that had the Delta Dental and what was the Seacoast logo at the time. And the idea is, as and when teams were receiving their medals and their trophies, obviously that's a key moment for like natural big smiles, Delta Dental. Any families or coaches or even UGC, so user generated content, when they would take those photos, they would upload it using the hashtag Show Us Your Winning Smile. And then after the event concluded, we would take those best photos and we would do like a knockout competition on our social media channels. And we allowed the followers to pick their best winning smile. And so we got some really good engagement and kind of extended that runway after the event. And then on that Friday, when the competition concluded, the winning team got this really cool swag bag from Delta Dental. We've just had so much fun with that partnership. It's been great.
That's amazing. I love that. I mean, not only like the high engagement that you're going to get, you'll increase your social media following because everyone on the team is going to get other people to vote for their winning smile, which gets more followers, more likes, more engagement. That's brilliant. And I think the other point or takeaway for that is starting with the contacts associated within your club. That's an easy, low-hanging fruit. Look at what parents are in your club with businesses that they have. and really starting there.
It's a great point. We talk about it all the time about the network our clubs, leagues, organizations have. Again, it's all through the lens of your brand. And, we always say that a club is involved with the most important thing to a parent, their child, right? We're developing that athlete, we're providing opportunities. There's a really strong bond between the club and its members. So it's families, the parents, the athletes. And just by harnessing that and recognizing that and just looking again kind of internally at this network of key decision makers, influencers, they believe in what your organization is doing, both on and off the field. And whether it was at Seacoast or, certainly now Three Step, we're really looking into that and understand like, hey, there's some real opportunities right here at our doorstep, so to speak. And, it allows us to kind of look at, okay, well, how could we turn that into a true partnership?
That's amazing. Now, do you have any advice for a club that's looking for going after a more of a corporate sponsorship, a hospital, medical industry? I know that's a big target.
Yeah, totally. The obvious thing is no one ever wants anyone to get injured, but it's inevitable just because of the amount of kids that are playing that it's going to happen. And again, that's a good segue to kind of lean on another partnership that we had at Seacoast United for probably 15 years. It was with Exeter Hospital Core Orthopedics, who was based out of New Hampshire. And again, that really at its core started with, we've got athletes, we want to assess them to kind of provide some education around preventive measures for injuries and to kind of, educate not only them, but our coaches and our families. In the off chance that if something did happen, we've kind of obviously established that runway already with them and that familiarity. But again, for anyone listening to this, to kind of use that as the obvious and then kind of take a step back and go, okay, well, that's really like a singular channel that we're going to, leverage. Well, how do we make that more comprehensive? And I say to this day, that partnership framework that we had with Exeter Hospital and Core Orthopedics was about as multifaceted as it gets. And that ranged from everything to, they had dedicated space within our facilities. So they had strength and conditioning locations and a rehabilitation location in our Hampton and Epping facilities, where they were actually on site providing curriculum and training for our athletes. And at the other end of the spectrum, when they were succumb to injury and they were on the mend, so to speak, and rehabilitating back to play, they were able to do that on site. We worked on a number of philanthropic community behavioral health initiatives, and this is all well before the pandemic, so that certainly was only exacerbated after. But we became one of the first clubs, I believe, in the entire country to do a teen suicide prevention and awareness program with our coaches, which our thought process was, this is no different than, taking CPR first aid, of which Exeter also administered for us, those courses. So that we were working on initiatives like that. I know this for a fact, we became the first club in the entire country to launch a fully holistic walking soccer program, which the audience for that, the youngest person was 64 years old and the most advanced athlete was 94. To this day is the best thing I've ever been involved with. And then there were, again, a number of community initiatives that we did with them around fundraisers and golf events and, 5K runs for cancer. So what started originally from hey, we've got athletes, we want to provide a value add with them from a health perspective and like an assessment standpoint, who's in our community. And then from there, it evolved into a extremely multifaceted partnership that had just such a tremendous impact on the community.
So then how would you recommend a small to medium-sized club charge or price a relationship like that? Sometimes I feel like the expectations of what they think they should get for then what they're delivering is not always easy to align on.
Yeah, and I feel like every time I talk about this subject, that's like the, no pun intended, the $1 million question, right? So what do I charge? I will say 10 years ago, from a youth sports perspective, I did feel it was kind of one of those like stick your finger in the wind kind of thing. And not to say it was like arbitrary, but we didn't have the access that we do today to resources that can help us truly define or assign like a value to what we have. And again, in no particular order, anyone really now can go online and, whether you're looking at your inventory from a CPM perspective and basing what you have off of impressions to, again, just looking within your community at other, whether it's high school, college, minor league sports groups. A lot of them have, corporate brochures, media kits that are readily available, and that's a really good market comp to kind of work off of in terms of evaluating what your opportunities are and how to price them accordingly. So I would say there's no one answer, so to speak, but I would also say 2015 compared to 2025, there's so much more industry knowledge and resources that are readily available that what was kind of somewhat a guessing and arduous process is a little bit easier now. It all boils down to like what you have available as an organization, because it's one of those, if you've got two teams and you're offering a uniform sponsorship for $100,000, first and foremost, if you get that, brilliant. But it's all relative. The more touch points that you can incorporate to your ask, and really, ultimately whatever that group that you're speaking to, whatever they're looking to get out of it, whether it's an ROI or a ROAS or however they quantify a successful partnership, it's really just kind of dialing into that, listening, and then, obviously highlighting opportunities that will align with that.
Well, and I think also an important point would be to align on the expectations at the beginning, like regular touch points, making sure that everyone is on the same page. It's not just, I'm going to take your money, throw you on the website in the uniform, and then ask you again in a year for a renewal. That the point is that it's a partnership, right? Where it's a win-win for both is really the definition of a successful partnership.
100%. Again, School of Paul Willis, his quip was, I'm not going to put a banner in the field and then call you up in 12 months' time when it's time to renew, right?
Mhm.
If that's the approach, you've failed.
Right.
So again, just referencing that Exeter Hospital relationship, you think about the amount of things we worked on together. That was in every sense a partnership. We were collaborating together. We were, looking to always see how can us as a collective make a difference. And the byproduct to that is the obvious one. People associate Exeter Hospital with Seacoast and vice versa. And that's naturally going to establish that runway where families and athletes and communities are going to gravitate to them because of all these things surrounding them over the course of the year. So spot on, Jennifer. People have gotten a lot more savvy these days, and rightfully so.
And I think the key thing that you just said is that your intent together was, what difference can we make? What impact can we make? So if that's the first priority and it's not money, then everything else is going to flow and align as it's supposed to. I think that's really the biggest takeaway of everything that you said. Truly, if everyone is looking at their inventory, what hospitals are around me, what parents are within our club, and then does it make sense to partner with them? And can we do something together that will make a difference? The money part will come as long as you have the follow through and everybody can execute, then that's great. Okay, so do you have any examples or stories of maybe a partnership that people can learn from that didn't work so well?
Well, yeah, that's actually a good question, especially after your last comment. It is important, especially with clubs and leagues and organizations listening to this, to find the right partner. And I know that's somewhat kind of a broad statement, but to your point, and this will, without naming specifics, I can speak to some examples of where, we had a partnership with such and such group. And for all intents and purposes, it was very transactional. They wanted to work with us to leverage our platform to sell X amount of widgets, right? And totally makes sense. But that's, to kind of maybe go right into it with that approach. And again, everyone's got their different KPIs, rightfully so. But, I think that kind of is difficult, especially for like a youth sports club or a league or an organization where it's a different value proposition. So with Exeter Hospital, it was all these intrinsic things with the hope. It's like, hey, by the way, because we've inserted and associated ourselves with or integrated ourselves with your community thing, we'll see an ROI in time, right? And again, however they quantify that. But again, to go back to your initial question, we've had some partnerships throughout the years at Seacoast, as I'm sure as anyone else, where you try something and it was very much like, hey, listen, we've got to hit this number if we're going to be doing this with you. And, we fell short of that. Don't mind admitting that. And I would also say at Seacoast's peak, we had over 100 sponsors and we were operating on an 82% renewal rate annually, which is something I'm extremely proud of. So yeah, it's all relative. You're going to have partnerships that don't work, but the ones where it is a true partnership, if I had partners that were working with me for over a decade, we're doing something right.
I agree. I love this. I think these are just real tangible takeaways that people can listen to and think about and really make an impact for their organization. Okay, so a question for you. If you had one wish and you could solve any problem in youth sports, but it's 5 years from now, unlimited resources, anything you want, what would you solve?
So I'll let the broader audience know that you did tip me off with this question. You weren't springing it on me. So it's been marinating. I wanted to look at this through the lens of, I coached soccer for over 15 years. So outside of doing sales and marketing at Seacoast, now overseeing partnerships for 3-Step Soccer. Soccer is my background. Soccer is my passion. And I've been fortunate enough to work with thousands and thousands of players. And we've done some amazing things. And to me, with the way youth sports is this day and age, I think there's an expectancy of, if I'm going to do this, it means my kid's going to play for the national team one day. And I have always from the onset tried to instill the value of team sports is all the intrinsic things you learn. And it's not just developing an athlete, it's developing the person. And I believe in that wholeheartedly. You think about teamwork, leadership, accountability. And when I coached, every single team I coached, I always kind of opened this up at the parent orientation. I was like, listen, if your son or daughter goes on to do X, Y, and Z in soccer, great. I go, but I'm trying to make them a better person, because the reality is, 99% of them aren't going to go play collegiately or professionally. But what are they going to do? They're going to go off to school. They're going to have a family one day. They're going to work somewhere. And if I've helped instill some sort of principles, then as far as I'm concerned, I've done my job, and I've been able to do it through the lens of soccer, of which I'm passionate about and I love it. So I know that's kind of like a hallmarky way of talking about like future state, but I do believe that. I hope whatever cycle we're going through right now with sports, and obviously it's well documented, it's a huge industry now, and obviously there's good and bad that comes with that. But my hope is in 5 years' time, whoever's involved, whether it's the coach, the athlete, or the parent, they look at it far beyond that moment and what that might translate into from like a collegiate or professional standpoint. There's so much more to it, and sport is such an amazing vehicle to achieve that. So that would be my hope. I hope that people's perspectives on what they're getting out of it, and more importantly, the most important person is the athlete. What's the athlete going to get out of it? How is this going to set them up for success in life and whatever they do, because we've been able to empower them?
I love that. I think that's a perfect answer.
I rehearsed it a lot, so.
It's a good one. Well, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to talk to us and really help elevate youth sports as a whole. These kinds of conversations are exactly what we're trying to really work on and bring opportunities and insight to everyone that is in this community that we both serve. So I appreciate you. Thank you. And you and I will talk soon.
Brilliant. Can't wait. Thank you so much for having me involved, Jennifer.
That's it for today's episode of the Playbook for Youth Sports. Thanks for joining us as we explore the business side of the game. If you found today's conversation helpful, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'll be back soon with more stories and strategies to help you grow and strengthen your organization. Until next time, keep building, keep leading, and keep playing.